Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. Human fleet arrives. The enemy didn't stand a chance. The stars didn't twinkle here, not in this dead corner of the galaxy where the war had already swallowed hundreds of civilizations whole. Battles had burned planets into ash. Space was littered with the broken hulls of ships, floating coffins with no one left to mourn them. And into this cursed stretch of nothing came us. The human fleet didn't arrive quietly. Our engines thundered like gods screaming through the void. 13 massive warships emerged from sublight, their hulls black as obsidian and marked with the red insignia of Earth Command. Smaller vessels, fighters, destroyers, and mobile carriers unfolded from their shadow. It was like watching a storm take shape from silence, a dark force rolling in unapologetic. On the bridge of the flagship wrecker, Admiral Thorne stood still, hands clasped behind his back, watching the enemy fleet on the holo display. Thousands of ships, all belonging to the Zarn Collective, inhuman monsters of bone and plasma who had conquered 12 systems in just 3 months. Entire colonies had gone silent. Civilians, soldiers, diplomats, it didn't matter. The Zarn didn't negotiate, they consumed. But now they faced something different. They faced us. "Status report," Thorne said, his voice low, calm, and cold. "All ships accounted for, sir," Commander Rivas replied. "Weapons hot, shields full, fighters ready to deploy on your mark." Thorne didn't blink. He studied the Zarn formation. They were tight, confident, arrogant even. They had never faced humans in open space before. They'd picked off border colonies and fringe mining outposts, easy prey. But this was the core fleet. This was humanity's answer, and it wasn't going to be diplomatic. "Open channel," Thorne said, a soft beep. The channel opened, broadcasting to every ship within range, Zarn and human alike. "This is Admiral John Thorne of the Terran Fleet," he said flatly. "You entered our space. You killed our people. You thought we were weak. Today we show you your mistake. We are humanity, and we do not kneel." The comms cut. Rivas smirked. "That'll get their attention." Thorne didn't smile back. "Number this will." He raised a hand. "Deploy all squadrons, lock missile pods, fire at will." The fleet came alive. Fighter bays hissed open, and the first wave of interceptors screamed into space, leaving trails of blue fire behind them. Long-range cruisers launched their payloads, dozens of torpedoes slicing through the vacuum. Energy cannons on the front lines began their charge, building to a searing crescendo, and then in perfect unison the entire fleet fired. The first volley struck before the Zarn even moved. Their front lines evaporated. Ships split apart in clean halves, internal fires spilling out into the void. Screams, alien and digital, filled the comms as chaos exploded across the enemy formation. They tried to respond. Plasma turrets swiveled and energy beams surged back. A few human ships took hits. One destroyer spun out, engines gutted before going silent, but it didn't slow us. The Reckoner plowed forward like a juggernaut, its main cannon charged, a golden glow building in its massive core. The sound shook the deck, humming with pure power. "Target locked," the weapons officer announced. "Fire," Thorne said. A beam of pure energy ripped through space like a sword made of sunlight. It pierced the Zarn battleship at the center of their command. There was no explosion, just silence. Then nothing. The enemy's flagship was gone, erased. On the enemy side, their fleet started to scatter. Cowards. But it was already too late because humanity had entered the war zone. And this wasn't a battle, it was a reckoning. The Zarn tried to regroup, but panic had already taken root. Their fleet, once a seamless wall of disciplined death, now fractured like glass hit by a hammer. Smaller cruisers broke formation, attempting to retreat behind asteroid belts or nearby moons, but the humans didn't give them the chance. On board the Reckoner, the crew moved like one organism, focused, emotionless. Admiral Thorne stood unmoved as his command ship sliced through what had once been enemy-controlled space around him. Screens showed kill counts ticking up, enemy squadrons blinking out of existence, and human pilots executing maneuvers too reckless for the Zarn to predict. "Sir," Commander Rivas said, "enemy fleet down to 64%. They're falling apart." Thorne's eyes didn't leave the display. "They don't know how to lose, that's what makes them dangerous, but they are losing." "Yes," Thorne muttered, "but scared animals are often the most vicious." He wasn't wrong. One of the remaining Zarn dreadnoughts powered up a forbidden weapon, something no Terran ship had seen in use before. It was massive, mounted on the underbelly of the alien vessel, glowing with a sickly green hue. Scanners went haywire trying to analyze it, and then without warning, it fired. The beam wasn't meant to kill directly, it was something worse. It tore a rift in space, a jagged, violent rip that distorted gravity and time. Two human frigates caught in the radius vanished, pulled into the rupture like leaves down a drain. No trace remained, no explosion, no communications, just gone. "Jesus Christ," Rivas whispered. "What the hell is that?" Thorne stared at the anomaly. The edges of the rift bled static across every sensor. A dimensional disruptor, he guessed. They weren't planning on using that, not unless they were desperate. "Should we fall back?" Thorne asked, looking at the carnage around them. Ships, human and Zarn, burned in silence. His people had come here to end a threat, not run from it. "No," he said. "They opened that hole in space. Now let's bury them in it." Orders were relayed instantly. Special ops squadrons were deployed. Elite pilots and prototype fighters, equipped for rapid burst strikes, swept in through debris fields, weaving between explosions and magnetic storms. Their goal: take out the power core of the dreadnought with surgical precision. On board one of those fighters was Lieutenant Zara Vex, Earth's most decorated pilot and the living definition of unreasonable confidence. She flicked switches, narrowed her eyes behind her visor, and led her team straight toward the disruptor beam source. "We get one shot at this," she said through comms. "Stick to formation, stay in my wake, and whatever you do, don't stop flying." The team acknowledged. As they sped in, the dreadnought's defensive grid lit up. Autocannons roared, anti-ship mines deployed, and swarms of Zarn interceptors swirled like hornets. But Zara wasn't afraid. She was human, and humans, unlike the Zarn, had evolved to thrive under pressure. She dove, twisted, let two interceptors tail her just long enough before flipping her ship and unloading dual-rail guns right into their cores. They burst like overripe fruit. Her wingmen followed suit, clearing a path as they neared the disruptor's power coil. A single opening blinked on the targeting grid. Now Zara shouted, "Missiles launched! Direct hit!" The dreadnought didn't explode immediately. First, its shield flickered. Then its engines went critical. A pulse surged through its hull, warping it from the inside out. Then, with a final ugly scream over the comms, it split apart and vanished into the rift it had opened. The rupture shimmered, groaned like a living thing, and then began to collapse. Back on the Reckoner, Rivas exhaled. "Target destroyed. Anomaly is closing." Thorne gave the faintest nod. "Tell the fleet," he said. "No mercy, we finish this." And they did. In less than 20 minutes, the remaining Zarn fleet was decimated. Not scattered, not damaged, gone. Every last ship turned to dust and floating corpses. It wasn't a battle, it was an execution, and every ship in the human fleet knew it. They'd come here with one message: we are not prey, we are the storm, and they had delivered it. The wreckage of the Zarn fleet drifted silently, metal twisted and scorched, floating like haunted reminders of their arrogance. But even in victory, there was no celebration aboard the human ships. Not yet, because something felt wrong. Admiral Thorne stood still on the Reckoner's bridge, eyes locked on the fading rift where the Zarn dreadnought had vanished. The space where it once was hadn't returned to normal. There was a shimmer, faintly pulsing, and beneath it, strange energy readings kept crawling across the screens. "They left something behind," he muttered. Commander Rivas frowned. "A trap." Thorne turned slowly. "Or a message." Before Rivas could answer, alarms screamed. A flash erupted from the remnants of the rift. Then 6 blinding lights appeared in a perfect hexagonal pattern. Ships, but not like before, not bone-plated, not organic and grotesque like the Zarn fleet had been. These were different, sleeker, darker, almost invisible against the blackness of space, and massive. "What the hell is that?" Rivas whispered. The scanners struggled, but eventually spat out a translation from intercepted Zarn data. "The vultures." Thorne's jaw clenched. "I've read the reports. They don't fight for territory. They come for aftermath. They feed on what's left." Rivas's voice dropped. "Scavengers." "No," Thorne said. "Executioners. The Zarn don't believe in surrender or burial. They call them in when they lose. These things clean the mess." The vultures moved like shadows, too fast for their size. In the span of a minute, they began harvesting what was left of their fallen, drawing wrecked Zarn vessels into their hulls with tractor beams and pulsing arcs of light that disintegrated everything into nothing. But then one of the vultures turned. Its scanners locked on the reckoner and it didn't move to salvage. It charged weapons. "Brace for impact," someone shouted. Too late, the beam hit hard, no warning, no time to shield. The entire bridge shook. Sparks burst from consoles. 2 crew members were thrown to the floor as a wall panel cracked open from the force. "Damage report," Thorn barked. "Starboard engine hit, secondary shields offline, hull integrity holding for now," a lieutenant called out, panting. Thorn stared at the enemy ship. They're not just here to clean, they're here to erase witnesses. The humans hadn't just destroyed the Zarn, they'd angered something darker. Zarevex's voice came through the fleet comms. "I'm still out here. I've got visuals, Admiral. There are more of them coming. How many? Too many, 30 at least. They're all around the edge of the dead zone. And Admiral, they're ignoring the wreckage now. They're coming for us." Thorn stood silently for a moment, then turned to the communications officer. "Put me through to the fleet." The officer nodded, and the channel opened. "All Terran ships, this is Admiral Thorn," he said, voice steady as steel. "The Zarn brought us here to die. Now they're sending in the things they're afraid of. That should tell you everything you need to know. This enemy doesn't want land. They don't want power. They want erasure, no history, no survivors, no legacy." He paused. "But we're human, and humans have a bad habit of surviving things we shouldn't." Across the fleet, captains and crews prepared for hell. They were battered, bruised, low on ammunition, and still reeling from the last fight. But retreat wasn't an option, not anymore. Because whatever these vultures were, they had to be stopped here. Thorn turned back to the bridge crew. "I want all AI battle systems online. Pull energy from weapons to reinforce the primary shield. Prioritize defense." Rivas blinked. "We're not going to fire back." "Oh, we will," Thorn said, eyes narrowing. "But first we learn how they bleed." Outside, the vultures moved into formation, silent, efficient, merciless, and the human fleet, bloodied but unbroken, faced them head-on in the vast, cold darkness of space. The real war had just begun. The silence before impact was almost worse than the battle. All across the human fleet, crews tightened harnesses, loaded final rounds, ran last-minute diagnostics. They were tired, running hot, and nearly out of reserves, but not a single hand shook. This wasn't fear now, it was fury. The vultures didn't hesitate. They attacked like machines, ruthless, without pattern, without ego. They struck from odd angles, slipping between ships with impossible precision, their weapons pulsing with energy no Terran tech could fully track. One human carrier, the Valiant Echo, was hit in the belly by a lance of crimson light. It folded in on itself like a can being crushed by a giant's hand, then erupted in a silent bloom of fire and twisted steel. Thorn didn't flinch. He watched the ship die, jaw tight, fingers gripping the rail beside his command chair. "They're analyzing us," he muttered, "watching what we defend, what we sacrifice." Commander Rivas nodded grimly, "And adapting to it." "Good," Thorn said. "So let's give them something to adapt to." He turned to tactical. "Bring Project Harpy online." The officer blinked. "Sir, it's still in prototype. We don't have time for perfect. Just make it lethal." Far beneath the Reckoner's main decks, deep in the weapon's hold, a monstrous object hummed to life, cylindrical, sleek, and blacker than space itself. Project Harpy was a banned weapon, still untested, born from a desperate collaboration between Earth's top engineers and rogue Martian scientists. It wasn't a beam. It wasn't a bomb. It was a virus, a digital predator designed to crawl through enemy systems and devour them from the inside. Thorn looked to Rivas. "They want erasure, so do we." Across the fleet, other ships responded in kind. They started uploading Harpy through directed transmissions, thin, barely detectable beams of data piggybacking on standard communications traffic. The vultures didn't see it coming. At first, nothing happened. Then one of the enemy ships flickered, its outer lights glitched, its movement slowed for a half-second, barely noticeable unless you were watching closely. "I think it's working," the comms officer whispered. Thorn gave a thin smile. "Don't think confirmed." Moments later, another vulture ship veered off course, spiraling awkwardly. Its weapons stuttered, then powered down completely. It began to drift, power still on, but systems confused, like a god suddenly forgetting how to breathe. Then a third ship stopped firing altogether. A fourth collided with one of its allies in a clumsy turn, causing both to spin out. Cheers started to break across the Terran fleet, but it was too early. From the far edge of the battlefield, a ripple of energy burst across the stars. The remaining vultures, all of them, flared with the same sickly green that the Zarn disruptor had used earlier. "They're linking," Ravas said, networking against the virus, blocking the infection. Thorn cursed under his breath. "They're smarter than the Zarn." Zaravex's voice crackled through the comms again. "Admiral, I've got eyes on their central hub. It's buried inside the largest vulture center of the formation. That's where the counter signals are coming from. Coordinates have been sent." Thorn didn't hesitate. "Send everything we have." The Reckoner shifted course, pulling power from non-essential systems. The rail gun charged, reactors humming so loud the deck vibrated. All other surviving Terran ships aligned with it, destroyers, cruisers, what was left of the escort fleet. They fired in unison, a coordinated wall of death aimed at a single point in space. The main Vulture ship saw it coming, and it did something no machine should have done. It moved back, retreated, but not fast enough. The barrage struck. The core of the Vulture flagship cracked, an unnatural shriek of metal and energy echoing through space. It didn't explode. It collapsed, pulled in on itself as if it had been hit by the hand of some ancient god. And just like that, the Vultures began to glitch again. Without the hub to guide them, Harpy finished what it started. One by one, the Vultures lost flight control, lost sensors, lost weapons. Some turned and fled, some just shut down and drifted. A few triggered self-destruct in a final act of defiance. Humanity had done it again. Not with numbers, not with strength, but with defiance, with grit, with the one thing no alien had ever understood about humans. We don't stop until we win or burn everything trying. On the bridge of the wrecker, Admiral Thorn sat slowly in his chair. Smoke drifted from a sparking console. Half the lights were flickering, hull damage alarms still blared in the background, but he exhaled. "We're still here," he said. Rivas, bleeding from a cut above his brow, chuckled bitterly, barely but alive. And for humans, sometimes that's all it takes to conquer the stars. For a while there was only silence, broken, static-filled silence. The battlefield drifted in eerie stillness, littered with broken metal, shattered hulls, and the cooling cores of both human and alien ships. The black of space felt heavier now, like it remembered the violence that had just taken place and was holding its breath for what came next. Admiral Thorn stared out the main viewport, watching the wreckage scatter. His reflection looked back at him, pale, sleepless, blood-speckled on his collar from someone else's wounds. He didn't speak, not yet. Commander Rivas moved slowly across the bridge, a data pad in hand. 27% of our fleet remains operational. Only 4 cruisers still have full weapons. Most ships are running backup life support. We lost the Vanguard, Echo, Segan, and nearly every drone platform. Thorn nodded slowly. "And the Vultures, gone, what's left is dead metal." Another long silence passed between them, but it was broken when the comms officer suddenly turned, face pale. "Sir, we're picking up a signal." Thorn narrowed his eyes. "From where?" "Deep space past the battle perimeter. It's not Zarn, it's something else. Signal strength is low but steady. Audio only." "Play it." There was a faint hiss of static, then a deep metallic voice broke through, warbled but unmistakable. "We watched you destroy the harvesters. Impressive, reckless, human." Thorn sat forward. "Who is this?" There was a pause, then the voice continued. "They were never meant to fight you. They were collectors, a first wave. You destroyed them. That was not in the calculations." Commander Rivas's face turned hard. "They weren't expecting us to win. You are no longer a question. You are now a problem." Then silence. No origin point, no signature, nothing left. The comms officer shook his head. "It didn't come from this system. It bounced off at least 9 relay points before it got here. Someone's watching us." Thorn muttered, "Zaravik Patchin next." "Admiral, I've been listening too. You hear what I hear?" "Yeah, that wasn't the Zarn," she said. "That was someone else. Bigger, smarter, probably the ones who built the Vultures." Thorn rubbed his eyes, exhaustion setting in like iron weights. We've poked a hole in the dark and something deeper just noticed. The bridge was quiet again. Everyone was thinking the same thing. What if the vultures were just the beginning, just a mop-up crew? And what if the real enemy hadn't even arrived yet? I want scans out in every direction, Thorn ordered. Finally, long-range probes. I want to know what's out there, and I want to know now. Also, start salvaging what we can. We'll need tech cores, anything we can steal from their ships. We just got a taste of something way out of our league, and I don't like going into the next round with a bloody nose and a blindfold. Yes, sir. The crew scrambled into motion. Repairs began, drones deployed. Medical bays overflowed with wounded, but there was no time to grieve, no time to count the dead, because something worse was coming. Zara's voice came back once more, quieter this time. I cracked one of the vulture nav cores. It's fried, but some of the data is still readable. What did you find? Thorn asked. A map, not a system chart, more like target coordinates, planets, colonies. How many? Hundreds, she said. And we're on the list, but we weren't the first. Thorn's stomach dropped. You're telling me there are other species they've already hit? Yeah, and based on what's left of the files, none of them made it. The implication was clear. Humanity wasn't the first to stand against this hidden enemy, but we were the first to survive. Thorn looked out the viewport once more into the deep, endless dark. Then let's make sure we're also the last, because if they are now considered a threat, then it is only a matter of time before war finds them again. And next time, the enemy won't underestimate us. The debris field was still drifting when the first recon probe vanished. No explosion, no trace, just gone. One moment it was pinging cleanly from the far edge of the dead zone, 20,000 kilometers past the wreckage of the vultures, and the next, silence as if it had been erased from reality, not destroyed, erased. Admiral Thorn stood in the sensor room watching the footage loop again and again. Same result. One blink it was there, next blink it wasn't. Zarevic was beside him, arms crossed, face pale. That wasn't a weapon, that was something else, a black hole. Rivas offered weakly, no ripple, and Zara interjected. No gravity lensing, no heat, nothing. It didn't fall in, it got wiped. Thorn turned slowly toward her. Can you track what wiped it? She hesitated, then said the last thing any of them wanted to hear. I think we triggered a fail-safe. He stared. Zara tapped on her data pad and brought up a rendering from the stolen Vulture nav core. Look, these targets, these weren't just coordinates. They were timed. They were supposed to be hit in a specific sequence, like knocking over dominoes. Thorn frowned. So, we didn't follow the sequence, we interfered. We weren't supposed to fight back, so now the system has changed its behavior. Commander Rivas looked at her sharply. Changed how? Zara's eyes didn't blink. Now it's sending something else. It was another few hours before they found it, or rather, before it found them.